In the vast, silent wilderness of the Plumas National Forest, the winter snow does not just hide the landscape, it buries the truth. It creates a white, freezing tomb that can keep secrets for months, or sometimes forever. Tonight, we journey back to 1978, to Northern California, to unravel a mystery that stands as the single most baffling missing persons case in American history. It is a story that defies every law of survival, every instinct of human nature, and every logic of forensic science. This is not just a story about death. It is a story about the terrifying power of the human mind, and how fear can be far deadlier than the cold. This is the full, unredacted tragedy of the Yuba County Five. To truly feel the crushing weight of this tragedy, you must first understand the innocence of the victims. They were 5 best friends, affectionately known to their families as the Boys. There was Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, and Jack Hewitt. These 4 men lived with intellectual disabilities, but they led lives filled with joy, community, and the safety of rigid routine. They were gentle souls who avoided conflict at all costs, men who stayed close to home, men who relied on their parents. And then there was the 5th man, the leader of the pack, Gary Mathias. Gary was different. He was an army veteran who had seen the darker side of life in Germany. He was tough, he was capable, but he was also fighting a constant war within his own head. Gary suffered from schizophrenia. As long as he took his medication, he was their protector, their big brother. But without it, the line between reality and nightmare would begin to blur, and the world would become a hostile place. The date was February 24th, 1978. The mood was electric. The boys played for a local basketball team called the Gateway Gators, and they had just won a match that would qualify them for the Special Olympics. They were celebrating. They were happy. They piled into Jack Madruga's prize possession, a turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego. Jack Madruga was a man who obsessed over this car. He knew every scratch, every sound it made. He was a cautious driver who would never, under any circumstances, take his beloved vehicle off the paved road. They stopped at a convenience store to buy snacks, Hostess fruit pies, Snickers bars, and chocolate milk. They had a schedule to keep. They had a plan. They were supposed to drive 50 miles south to their warm beds in Yuba City, where their parents were waiting up for them. But they never arrived. Somewhere in the darkness, a decision was made that no detective, no psychologist, and no profiler has ever been able to fully explain. Instead of driving south, they turned the car east. They drove away from the lights of the valley and began to climb. They drove up into the Sierra Nevada mountains, higher and higher, into a brewing snowstorm. They left the paved road and turned onto a rocky, treacherous logging trail. This is the first impossibility. Why would Jack Madruga, a man terrified of scratching his car, drive it up a mountain goat trail in the middle of the night? Was he forced? Was he lost? Or was he running from something he saw in the rearview mirror? They drove until the snow became too deep to continue. And there, the car stopped. When police found the vehicle days later, it sat there like a pristine artifact of a vanished civilization. It wasn't stuck. The tires had spun slightly, but 5 strong men could have easily pushed it free. The gas tank was quarter full. The engine was in perfect working order. The keys were gone. They had abandoned a warm, functional shelter to walk out into a freezing blizzard, wearing nothing but thin windbreakers and basketball sneakers. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, just footprints leading away into the white abyss. But the mystery deepens with the account of a witness. A man named Joseph Shans was already stuck in the snow further up the road that night. He was suffering a mild heart attack, sitting in his car, praying for help. Through his pain, he saw headlights. He saw the Mercury Montego stop. He saw a group of men standing outside the car in the driving snow. Desperate, Joseph rolled down his window and screamed for help. But the moment his voice pierced the silence, the lights went out. The figures didn't run to him. They went quiet. They hid. When Joseph called out again, he heard nothing but the howling wind. This detail is chilling. It suggests that the boys were not just lost. They were hiding. They were terrified. They chose the freezing darkness over the possibility of being seen by a stranger. Months passed. The seasons changed. The snow began to melt, and the forest began to give up its dead. The searchers found the first remains 20 miles away from the car. 20 miles! Think about that distance. 5 men, ill-equipped for winter, walked 20 miles through waist-deep snow in the dead of night. It is a feat of endurance that even professional mountaineers would struggle to achieve. It speaks to a level of adrenaline and fear that push their bodies beyond the breaking point. They found the body of Ted Wire inside an abandoned Forest Service trailer. And the scene inside that trailer is what turns this story from a tragedy into a psychological horror. Ted was found wrapped in 8 sheets, tucked into a bed. His shoes were missing. His feet were severely frostbitten. But the autopsy revealed something impossible. Ted didn't die from the cold immediately. He had lived inside that trailer for nearly 3 months. His beard had grown thick. He had lost nearly 100 pounds. He had starved to death. He starved to death in a room full of food. Investigators found a locker in the trailer. It was packed with military sea rations, cans of stew, fruit, and spaghetti, enough food to keep all 5 men alive for a year. There was a propane tank outside, full of gas, connected to a heater. All they had to do was turn a valve, and they would have had heat. There were matches on the shelf. There was heavy clothing. Yet Ted Wire lay there, freezing and starving, surrounded by the very things that could have saved him. Why didn't they eat the food? Why didn't they turn on the heat? Why didn't they start a fire? Psychologists have proposed a theory called folie à deux, or shared madness. The theory suggests that Gary Mathias, the Army veteran, began to succumb to his schizophrenia as the stress mounted and his medication wore off. In his delusional state, he may have convinced the others that they were being hunted. He may have told them that opening the cans would make too much noise, that lighting a fire would signal the enemy. Because the other men trusted Gary, because he was their leader, they followed his rules. They sat in the dark, shivering, hungry, watching their friend waste away, waiting for permission to survive. Permission that never came. One by one, the remains of the others were found scattered in the woods. Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling had collapsed in the snow, never making it to the trailer. Their bodies were found only skeletons claimed by the forest scavengers. Jack Hewitt's remains were found just a few miles away, identified only by his spine and his clothing. His own father was the one who found him, a tragic end to a desperate search. But the final piece of the puzzle is the one that is missing: Gary Mathias, the man who knew to survive. Inside the trailer, police found Gary's tennis shoes. He had left them behind and put on Ted Wyer's leather shoes, likely because his own feet were swollen from the frost. This proves Gary made it to the trailer. He was the one who opened the few cans they did eat, using an Army-issue P-38 can opener that only he knew how to use. He was the one who tucked Ted into bed. He was the caretaker. And then he vanished. Did Gary Mathias walk out into the snow to find help for his dying friend? Or did his mind finally break completely, sending him wandering into the oblivion of the forest, chasing phantoms that only he could see? To this day, not a single bone, not a shred of clothing, not a trace of Gary Mathias has ever been found. He is a ghost in the machine of this mystery. The Yuba County Five did not die because of a monster in the woods. They did not die because of a murderer. They died because of fear. They died because the human mind is a fragile thing, capable of creating nightmares more real than the cold wind outside. They were prisoners in an unlocked cell, guarding themselves against an enemy that didn't exist. As you look at the pictures of the forest today, remember that sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's hiding in the dark, it's what's hiding in our own heads. The snow has melted, but the silence of the Yuba County Five remains heavy and unbroken.